What's up? I'm Scotty from the Boardr, where we help run some of skateboarding's most fun events. In this series of videos, we'll be covering how to run a quality event. In this segment, we're covering budgets and funding.
So we're going to get started here with a few of the items that you need a budget for, why you actually need money to run your event. So we'll get started with staff first. Having a volunteer staff is okay. You can have a volunteer or two, but we find that there's more accountability when you actually have a staff that you can pay. So that is part of the reason of the importance of funding. So we're going to run through a few ways that you will be spending this funding. So we'll start with the director. This is the person that is directing and running the whole contest, calling the shots. You definitely need that person up at the top, and if you're the one watching this, it's probably going to be you. You need a project manager. That is a person right below the director. That would be like someone being a vice president below a president. The project manager knows every single thing that's going on and is actually operating the event. When there's an issue that the project manager cannot solve, he and the director are figuring it out. He or she and the director are figuring it out. Below the project manager, you have the announcers. Now, of course, your announcers are going to have to be completely informed. You're going to have 1 to 2 announcers. You don't need to, but 2 is definitely better. It's a more professional product. The announcers are the go-to guys for everyone at the contest. You know, the parents, the fans, the spectators, and the skaters. They're going to go immediately up to the announcers and ask questions and figure out what's going on. So that announcers have to be 100% informed of every single thing and every detail about the contest. Below the announcers, we have the judges. Traditionally, we used to use 5 judges. Now we use 3. Keeps the budget down, and you find 3 of the best and most qualified judges. Super important that you're gonna find guys that are like well-versed and lifelong, very, very experienced skateboarders that actually still pay attention to everything that's going on. We also have an assistant. The assistant is like, they're just there, they don't have a specific job. Maybe they're picking up trash at one point, grabbing lunch, icing down some drinks, doing whatever you need, solving problems whenever a problem comes up. You just have basically assistant and or runner, as people call them. You know, in different industries, they're called runners. Of course, you have to have a filmer and photographer. You don't want to do all of this work and put this big event on, relatively big event on whatever scale you're working, and not have it properly documented. Have a filmer there, have a photographer there. Even if you don't know what you're doing, you don't know where you're releasing the footage or what you're doing with it, you have to have record of everything you did. Don't do all this work and not have those 2 things handled. So another way that you will be spending some of your funding will be via venue fees. It's going to cost you in some way to use a venue. So there are 2 different types of venues that you could actually use. The first one would be public. That's just like your standard skate park that you go to, your local park that's run by the city or owned by the city. It's like in a park somewhere. That's considered a public skate park. And then a private skate park is something compared to something that's in a warehouse, that's a private business, that's owned by a person or a small group. That's what we consider a private skate park. No matter what, in some way, either the public park or the private park is going to need to be compensated. Items are going to need to be paid for in some capacity. Now, whether you choose to do your event at a public park or a private park, there are certain costs that are going to be associated with it. Number 1, permitting. The city is going to require a permit in some way. Private park, you might get away without a permit, but sometimes when you own a private facility, you still need a permit to do an event. So I would recommend that you get a permit no matter what, because at that point you run the risk of getting shut down if you don't have a permit. The police show up, they ask what you're doing, and then all of a sudden you're like, oh, I'm doing a contest. Oh, do you have a permit? That's going to be the first question they ask. Permits can be very, very inexpensive, and they can be quite expensive. We have cities here in Florida where it's very, it's nominal. It's $100 or $75, $150. And then if you go to New York City, it could be $2,500. It just depends on where you are. Second thing is medical. Sometimes you're required by a municipality to have medical or some sort of EMT on staff. That's not necessarily always the case. We operate a lot of contests without medical sitting there, but it's something to think about because it may be required. Third is almost always required: insurance. Everyone's going to ask you for a COI, certificate of insurance. Definitely something you have to budget for. If you have insurance as a company already, great. You can just get the public or private park named on that insurance certificate. Or if not, you can pull a policy just for the day, which is very normal and easy to do with your local insurance agent. It seems like the ways to spend your budget are endless. You need equipment, you need supplies. Let me break down what that actually is. If you're doing any sort of event, you have to have sound. So you're gonna need a sound system. That generally consists of a couple speakers and a what we call a mixer and a couple microphones. Cordless mics are best, but you definitely need a sound system. If you have a sound system, you're gonna need power. You gotta plug it in somewhere. So when you're working with a private skate park, you're in an indoor warehouse like we're in right here, there's outlets everywhere, great. They're probably gonna work. You're set with power. If you end up outside at your local skate park, the skate park that is run by your local municipality, there could be outlets, they might not work. You're gonna need a generator. Make sure you're planning on having power in some way, whether you borrow a generator from your friend's dad or you own one or you rent one for the day. I would definitely bring one to make sure that you are all set when it comes to power. When it comes to tents, if you're doing an event indoors, you can live without tents, obviously. Outdoors, it's almost a necessity. You want your judges under a tent, registration under a tent. Make sure there's some shaded area in some capacity. Next up, tables and chairs. You're gonna need some sort of tables and chairs for registration, judging, announcing. It doesn't have to be fancy. It doesn't have to be anything special. It's stuff you can grab out of your friend's garage or your own house, borrow from your parents, whatever it takes. Take stools from home, whatever. Just have something somewhere comfortable for your staff to be sitting while they're working. There are more and more ways to spend your budget. Here you go. Don't forget, you're having an event. You need some sort of prizing and trophies, all right? Well, depending on your number of divisions, you will need prizing and trophies for each one. We generally do on like an all ages type, all skills event. We have prizing to 5th place and trophies to 3rd place. That way, you know, you walk away with it, you got that great trophy when you're in top 3 and you get some sort of bag with prizes in it to 5th place. Prizing, you know, you can hit up companies, that's how you can get it. You don't necessarily need to buy that. Trophies are very, very difficult. They're hard to make. They're hard to get people to make for you. So when it comes down to trophies, you pretty much are gonna have to buy them no matter what. You're gonna need to spend some of your budget on those trophies. Those are some ways you're gonna spend your budget. That doesn't include everything. It's a general list. Each individual event is unique in its own way, and there's gonna be other items that come up. So let's talk next about funding. How are you gonna get money? Maybe you're already funded and you're trying to figure out how to use your funds. If that's the case, great. You are one step ahead of everybody else. However, here's some other great ways to generate revenue if you already have funding. Number 1, entry fees. This is an easy one and kind of a no-brainer. You can charge people to skate in your event. Of course, you want to have the most professional event possible, so they're getting a value for spending money. But anywhere from 20 to 40 bucks for a local event is very, very reasonable and very normal and commonplace. Second, this word is like the word that's used constantly in this industry. Sponsorship. How do I get sponsors? How do I get sponsors? Sponsors. You always hear this. Getting sponsorship money, actual money from a company is extremely difficult to do, but you just have to be prepared and you have to give them a reason to spend money with you. That's the whole thing about sponsorship. Hey, I need your money. You're going to get this in return. That's a whole different conversation, but it is a way to generate funding. Now, third is you could get government funding. There are dollars available in governments and municipalities. There's all sorts of organizations and that are willing to help you get an event done. We had this one example in Lakeland, Florida, where we just thought it was kind of expensive to rent the skate park, and then we were like, hey, we might not do it. Might not do it going forward. There's not enough. We don't have the funding to do this. They turned around and said, oh wait, there's this local sports association that's willing to pay for your permitting fees. That was really nice. We didn't know it existed. It's out there if you ask for it. Then we have another scenario where the local municipality, which is in Zephyr Hills, Florida, they actually give us the park for free because they realize that we bring value to the community. That is what gets me into the next comment, is relationships. You're trying to show the local skate park, whether it's public or private, that you are bringing something of value to the community. Develop a relationship with whoever you're working with, make it a pleasure to work with you, and provide something of value, and there you go. You have a foot in the door. People are willing to back you and willing to give you the opportunity to do something cool, fund you in different ways, and help you out in different ways if you build good relationships. Hopefully, I helped you figure out how to generate some revenue, and I certainly helped you figure out how to spend it. That's it for budgets and funding. Hope you're enjoying watching this series on how to run a skateboarding event. If you have any general questions, you want to hit us up, contact us anytime. help@theboardr.com.